Apologize about last week. I was traveling and I projected the wrong direction 2 hours. I was ready 2 hours before the appointed time at 9:30, but it turns out it would have been much later in any case. Okay. So we have our material from last week, and the group seems to be getting smaller, and I understand why. It's hard to hold on to this without a story, without there's no tension tension involved in the text. We look at it, we say, oh, that's nice, or that's witty, or that's, I don't like that. But I'm glad we're doing it. For me, certainly for my own working knowledge of biblical literature, I'm happy to be doing this. So let's begin with section 1 through 10. In my ever ongoing search for how to delineate units, I've come up with a few ideas. That's how I broke it this time. And this one has to do with bite, with home, beginning this section, and the next section also begins with the word home, bite. And that's how I got to this breakdown here. Although it could certainly be done otherwise, but we have to break them down into bite-sized pieces in any case. So, Roberta, would you like to read the first section, 1 through 10?
I
think you're good. We can hear you. You're good.
Okay, fine. The wisest of women builds her house, but folly tears it down with its own hands. He who maintains his integrity fears the Lord. A man of devious ways scorns him. In the mouth of a fool is a rod of haughtiness, but the lips of the wise protect them. If there are no oxen, the crib is clean. But if a rich harvest comes through the strength of the ox, an honest witness will not lie. A false witness testifies lies. A scoffer seeks wisdom in vain, but knowledge comes easily to the intelligent man. Keep your distance from a dullard, for you will not learn wise speech. It is the wisdom of a clever man to understand his course, but the stupidity of the dullard is delusion. Reparations mediate between fools, between the upright goodwill. The heart alone knows its bitterness, and no outsider can share in its joy. Interesting. There's more than that. There's probably 6 different sets of comments.
Yeah, usually we think of them as couplets. Two lines, yeah. So each of the 2 lines, sometimes it's 3, it's a threesome.
Yeah.
But mostly it's 2-liners, and each of those 2 lines is 1 verse in the biblical text. So a lot of interesting things and I know that I boldened wise is folly, wise, etc., wisdom, stupidity, fools. But is there any other things that come up that might bind this unit together, or maybe for us to understand why the editor put these things together?
They're all examples of good versus bad.
Good versus bad, yeah.
But I don't know.
Goodwill. Beware of all the but it doesn't seem to. They're all just attestations of interesting commentary, but I don't know that they go together.
Okay.
Oh, kind of opposites.
Yeah. Some of them are.
Right. Mostly opposites: a false witness, true witness, wisdom, stupidity, a
Right.
woman who builds her house. Then
Mhm. When I was at university, some people were calling those tigbolet hafucha, opposite parallels, to which Zakowicz would say, if it's a parallel, then it can't be opposite. So that's you know, there are other words for it now. I'm not really sure.
maybe they're couplets. They're just couplets.
Yeah, that's probably that. I would say that, Malcolm. They're couplets. They just are, and sometimes they complement each other, and sometimes they are opposite. But when they are opposite, it might also help the memory. They're different things. You know, any other things that come up.
It's interesting. The wisest of women builds her house. I didn't know that they assumed that women did much, but here we have her creating her own house. But is that what's happening inside her house?
If you had to guess, what would you think? Is it the hammer and nails and the 2x4s?
It could not be. No.
Probably not. A bayit is a household. It's a home. It's a household. It's not just the building itself.
Right.
You know, if you remember the story of the midwives in Egypt, and Pharaoh says, you know, you got to kill them all when they're born, while the boys are born, and they hide the boys, and they say to Pharaoh, oh, these Israelite women, they're too quick for us. They're like animals. They give birth even before us midwives get there. And the text then says, the editor says that God blessed them by giving them houses. And the houses were giving them progeny, you know, a legacy of people. Yeah. So that it seems to me that's probably it, or I would maybe say household. But this is an interesting thing, and this has been bothering me for 2 weeks because I prepared this already for last week. Chochmot nashim banta beita. I know that verse from some midrash that I can't find. I no longer have the really good database program that was put out by Bar Ilan University, which I think we stopped paying. The subscription was expensive, and the software was complicated to get on your laptop. I think I stopped it when I left Israel in 2010, and it's not online. I have lots at my fingertips. Safaria. I show that to my friends in clergy. As you know, many of you know, I met with Steve Kinney in Texas this last week, and we were talking about how we prepare things, how we get to rabbinic literature. He could not believe that Safaria was available not only for online, not only in an app, but none of it cost anything. It's all a nonprofit. And that's a good way to find certain things, but it's not for a word search or a term search. And internet is not helping these days. The more we get into the internet, the harder it is to really find things specifically the way we used to be able to. In any case, I'm not sure why I know this phrase so much. I'm guessing it's a rabbinic text that I worked on. I've got something I'll share with you in just a moment. But there's a debate on how to translate this. The translation here is the wisest of women, chachamot mitoch hanashim, chachmot hanashim. That's one way of understanding that. The wisest amongst all women. Another one is chokhmat nashim, that the vocalization is of the wisdom of women builds her, a wisdom of a woman builds her own house, but you have to change the vowels for that.
Yeah, it wouldn't be Nashim, it would be right, Isha or something.
No, be chachmat.
You said of a woman, so it'd have to be plural.
No, it
Nashim?
would be chokhmat nashim banta beita. The women's feminine wisdom builds her house. There's problems all the way around chokhmot, because if you take chokhmot as plural, which it's pointed as plural, then you have a problem with banta, singular. She built. So the whole thing's a little bit weird, I guess. Yeah. Probably the translation here is the best. I think he's got wisdom. He takes out the word nashim, he thinks that was added afterwards. So wisdom herself builds her house, and the fall and folly tears down throneheads. In any case, between wisdom being personified, you know, the whatever it might be, and I don't know so much where I know that. I think I looked up even titles of books. There's a title of a book, a Hasidic book, Chochmot Nashim, but it's a recent Hasidic book from Breslov, and I know that's not where I know it from. I'm wondering if I have a book called Chochmat Nashim Banta Beita, which is about women's halacha, which is, I kind of have a section in my library of that, not available to me right now in boxes in the garage. But I did want to share with you a passage from Midrash Mishlei that I only have in Hebrew, so give me a moment, let me take it. And it says, Chachmat Nashim Banta Beita, Zo Yochevet, that's Yochevet, who is Moses' mother. She Mida Shloshat Tzadikim, that she put out into the world 3 righteous people, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. And all 3 of them merited serving the people of Israel. Moshe, in that he brought the manna, Aaron, in that he brought the clouds of glory, and Miriam for her well. And all 3 of them were prophets. And that's typical of that kind of midrash, where it says something about this hypothetical man or woman, and then the midrash wants to assign certain persona to that particular midrash. But I don't remember where I just don't know where I know it from, and it bothers me a little bit. So anybody, if you can come up with that for me, I will be able, because I haven't been able to sleep really since I've had difficulty sleeping. Yeah. Okay. What else do we have here?
I do have a question just about Mishlei. The more we read in Mishlei, the more it comes to my mind. How exactly was Mishlei utilized in the Beit Knesset or in the house of study? How were they utilized?
Right. So this is something that came up for the Jewish cooperative over Orange County, JCOC, who many of you, I know you from there, or you've gotten to me from there, Rabbi Marsha Tilchin asked me to do something on Mishlei, and it's a 4-part course. It may turn into 5 parts, so I had to kind of synthesize some of the stuff we've learned until now, and we're not even halfway through the book. And one of the things I said in that group, which I don't think I really spent time on the beginning, in the first time we started to do Mishlei, I didn't give that much of an introduction, is that Mishlei is not part of the liturgy in that there is a reading. Like there's no reading on a holiday, there's no Shabbat reading Mishlei as a large text. Mishlei does supply different phrases and verses for some of the liturgy. We brought, every once in a while, we run into something. I don't know if we have one today. Oh,
Eshet Chayil is one.
Well, Eshet Chayil, yes, of course, that's those verses. But it was a few weeks ago we had Eitz Chaim Hi in the Machazikim Ba, right? So that's rare. That's where most of the biblical quotes from prayer, day-to-day prayer and Shabbat prayer, are from the Psalms. And then you've got a whole slew of quotes from the prophets that are also used for Haftarah, but still in the High Holiday prayer book. In the High Holiday liturgy, there's a lot of prophetic literature quoted, and much less so in day-to-day liturgy. So that so it wasn't a sacred text in that way. By the way, I saw a Christian writer a few weeks ago online who said, and as it is well known, the rabbis of the Talmud debated whether to include Mishlei into the canon.
Did they?
And I'm thinking to myself, well known, like I kind of know those kinds of things. So I go back, I see nothing, and in a footnote to this guy's article, he quotes another Christian book writer from I don't know, mid-20th century, who says of course it's well known that, and this is like social media all over again, right? This is how news is good. I don't think so. There was a debate over Song of Songs.
Right.
There are debates over where should it be in the canon, because many people thought that Moshe wrote Eov. Maybe it should come after Deuteronomy. There's a debate in Middle Ages about the last verses of the book of Deuteronomy. Ibn Ezra says that's it. If you don't think about this too much, because you'll go blind. Not you'll go blind. You'll be confused because then you realize that Joshua wrote the end. Somebody else had to write when Moses died, etc. Okay. So the only thing I can say as far as the Beit Midrash is concerned, it feels sometimes like there is a Rebbe who's teaching his children and maybe there's a text that was used by the rabbis in that way as well. Do you remember when I took some time just to do a few verses in chapter 6 about the Midrash Tanchuma, about the two false prophets? Were you at that one, Malka?
Yes.
So I've always kind of thought that maybe that was a drasha, a sermon, or a little lecture, a little vignette based on, to my mind, that's based on that one verse, those whatever, one or two verses in Mishlei, that whole story, because I can find how it plays out in the story, each part of it. But I can't prove that other than that. That's an idea that I've had. I don't know that anybody else has said that. And then what would that mean? Where was it happening? In the Beit Midrash? When we were in yeshiva, we weren't really supposed to take time on that kind of Gemara, that kind of Talmud. When you got to a section of Agadah, of legends, by the way, Agadah, Haggadah are the same word. One is just with a Hebrew pronunciation, or the other one's Aramaic. They both mean telling the story. So when we get to the legends, the kind of Talmud that you usually see from me, less so maybe the halacha, in yeshiva you skip over those parts because they're just not thought to be. They're just not thought to be that serious. But I think there was a section. I think there was times when perhaps the students got together to hear about wisdom literature, right? Yeah, and let's not forget the Pirkei Avot, chapters of the Father, the ethics of the Father, is all this kind of stuff. But it's the minority. It's the exception that proves the rule. Good question. All right, smack in the middle, we have a false witness testifies lies. V'afiach kzavim a checker. That's actually in that Midrash Tanchuma as well. And I've seen that used quite a bit in rabbinic literature. That's when talking about somebody who's been dishonest.
What does kizavim mean?
Kzavim, so the root kazav is parallel to sheker.
Oh, okay.
So where would you know it from? The way that it got into modern Hebrew is in the afel form, achzav, which is to disappoint, bordering on check. It doesn't come out the way that you thought it would come out. So that's not truth. Didn't turn out to be truth. A nachal ksiv is a ksiv, kind of a river, is a dry riverbed, a wadi that fills up with rainwater only, doesn't flow all the time. Kozev. A little bit used in modern Hebrew. In eloquent Hebrew, you might use it. Yeah. Okay. I was drawn to the last two lines. I was drawn to, right? Lev yodea marat nafsho. The heart alone knows its bitterness. V'simchato lo yitarev zav, and no outsider can share in its joy. I don't think that's a truism per se. I think maybe I'm not using the right word. It's not all inclusive. It's not a rule for all humanity, but who of us have not experienced those two lines? A combination of those two lines. Nobody knows how bitter something we feel. And also sometimes we can't share. When we say to people, you have no idea how happy I am about. We say that a lot, but of course, there's something a little insulting about it, right? There's no way you can share in my joy. I know we don't mean it that way, but maybe so I was drawn to this particular verse. Other comments?
Interesting, the wisdom of a clever man. It is the wisdom of a clever man to understand his course, but the stupidity of the dullard is delusion. And I'm not sure if I understand. Isn't the dullard not able it's not delusion, it's just inability to comprehend if it's a dullard.
So delusion, I understand delusion as being not intentional, right? It's like you are deluded. You think you're going to be appointed as the Secretary of State. I'm sorry. These people they're delusional. They're delusional. They think that peace can come in the Middle East in their lifetime. Go ahead.
No, they could make the Gaza into a playground.
Yeah,
that's delusional.
Okay.
Going back to the last two sentences, you talked about no one can share joy, but it reminds me of like when you go to a funeral or you comfort a mourner, people, no one can share the pain of a death of a loved one. It's sort of the opposite of that.
Well, you can try. We can empathize, but I think maybe what it's saying, you really can't be. It's like again, how so often people, oh yeah, I know what you're going through. My father died too. No, I know what you're going through. I had cancer. I'm better now, but no, people don't. It's hard, but that doesn't mean let's always remember these are not absolutisms. They're never meant to be golden rules in the same way that love your neighbor as yourself. All that has its limitations as well. But these are meant to, I think, certain situations in life.
The book of Proverbs, this is the first time we've actually come across Proverbs. I mean, in a sense, sayings that are interesting and commentaries on life.
Right. So Proverbs in that particular meaning of Proverbs can have different meanings. But I know what you're talking about. The way that most of us would use Proverbs, that's actually been in the last since chapter 10. Chapter 10 started a new section of the book of Proverbs, which is these are the Proverbs of Solomon. And scholars think that this section is older than the first section that we went through. The first section we went through also had a title that said these are Proverbs of Solomon. These are Solomon's this is Solomon's wisdom, but they were more like lectures. You could feel there was a theme to each section, almost to every chapter, but not exactly. These in this whole section, it goes on for chapters, is two-liners, two couplets, couplet after couplet, and it's really hard to find. One telltale is in the kind of commentaries I use, these biblical commentaries. I don't know how much you can see. So you'll see there's the verses in bold, and then there's the commentary. Well, in this section of the book of Mishlei, Michael Fox, all he does is 2 lines, commentary, 2 lines, commentary, as opposed to other parts of the book where you'd have, well, just trust me, you'd have the text will be black text, the dark text will be 10 verses and then commentary, because he's broken it down to units. He's really resigned, he more than others, I think, has resigned himself. No, let's not waste too much time trying to see why these pieces are put together, and let's try to understand each couplet unto its own. Oh, hey,
Rabbi, it's Ella. Could you tell me what line you're on?
Yes, we're at the we're in the first section of 1 to 10. You see that box?
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I think we need to turn off one of you may have 2 phones going or
I
something.
don't know. Let me see. Okay.
Hoppa.
I have. Okay.
You can mute yourself. I don't know. It might be she has 2.
Okay.
No,
so,
I'm okay now, I think. My computer.
Yeah, why? I'll let
My
you.
computer.
Madalena, why don't you deal with this, okay? If you could.
My computer is off. I don't know.
Can you shut your phone
I
off?
think you have your the phone is on.
No, but I have my phone has the text. My
Oh,
phone has the text and my iPad, and I can see the video.
Well, you bet. Yeah, I guess you can mute both.
Download.
Okay.
Whatever you did, it seems to work.
Okay, all right then. Anything else on this first section? Okay, 11 to 15. Les, why don't you read for us?
The house of the wicked will be demolished, but the tent of the upright will flourish. A road may seem right to a man, but in the end it is a road to death. The heart may ache even in laughter, and joy may end in grief. An unprincipled man reaps the fruits of his ways, a good man of his deeds. A simple person believes anything, a clever man ponders his course.
So this could have been an extension of the other part. I don't want to have pieces that are more than 10 verses. But it's the idea that how, oh, here's another take on the house as a structure, a literary structure in which we can talk more about wise folk and dullards. Anything stand out to anybody here?
Interesting. A road may seem right to a man, but in the end, it is a road to death. That's kind of very ominous kind of thing.
Right. He really thought he could become a multi-millionaire and be charitable by going to Las Vegas and investing all of his savings. And then ended up committing suicide. I don't know.
Is that a literal road, or is it sort of a path?
I think it's a path.
It's
Although,
a path.
Again, good metaphors and good, if there's a metaphor or whatever, the good parables mean that they have some sense in both worlds, right? You may seem, yeah, you know what, no, I think we should go this way. You go this way and boom, there's, he falls off of a cliff or he gets eaten by an animal or, but I think it's figurative. Given everything else, I don't think the house here is necessarily the house will be demolished stone by stone. I think the house will fall apart because he's wicked won't stand. Whereas the tent, which is a weaker thing, that will still flourish. That's the one that'll really happen, of the tzaddik.
Is it also saying that the beginning doesn't necessarily portend the end?
Absolutely, yeah. And joy may end in grief. Right?
In other words, don't feel too good about having good times at the beginning of something because it could turn bad. It's kind of pessimistic.
Yes, very.
Yeah, and if you think this is bad, then we would do the book of Kohelet. Ecclesiastes is even worse. One might say this is the world, dude. This is how the world works.
Rabbi?
Yes.
It just seems to me, I keep thinking of walk humbly before God. This kind of all relates to having faith in God and pursuing wisdom and walking upright and not seeking evil ways or dishonest ways. I mean, just saying it in many different ways.
Right. Although you agree that God has taken a back seat in this chapter, at least.
Yeah.
Right. We may know from other verses that God is hovering, and that's one of the things that's come up of our study for those that don't come every week and kind of, ask the bigger questions. One thing that has come up is that there is absolute secular wisdom literature that doesn't involve gods. And there is absolutely theological literature that is only about God. And Mishle is in between. It's in between. Yeah.
What is Suglev?
Where are you looking?
Mer Kavev, and then it goes.
Yeah,
What's
Suglev, right.
Suglev?
Yeah, I didn't look that up, but that's an imprisonment reached the fruit of his ways. Oh, Yizba Suglev. I don't know. I need to look that up. Yeah. So go ahead, somebody else go ahead and maybe bring up something else and I'll look up that word because I didn't look that up. Nothing else? I think Richard's only listening today, but Richard would usually have something to say. At least some joke.
Well, the other two, the others seem more easily understood. The last few. They're
I think that the last two lines, a simple man believes anything, a clever man ponders his course, is really related to the next two. A wise man is diffident and shuns evil, but a dullard rushes in confidently. You know, exercise caution and don't be impulsive.
Yeah,
Don't-
absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm still just looking for that one word, Suk. I may have to get back to you.
Okay.
Apologies, I didn't catch that. Yeah, he's got nothing. That's strange. Okay, have to look in other commentaries.
Okay.
Okay, let me make a note. Shall we go on?
yeah.
Megan? 16 to 18?
I have a terrible cold, so I sound
Oh,
terrible. So if someone else can do it, it would be great.
sure. Madalena?
Yes, it's the 1923.
No, 16 to 18.
A wise man is diffident and shuns evil, but a dullard rushes in confidently. An impatient man commits folly. A man of intrigues will be hated. Folly is the lot of the simple, but clever men glory in knowledge.
Okay.
These definitions are a little bit more complicated than the previous ones. Here we have again the dullard who does things, who apparently can do a lot of things, but here he rushes in confidently. All right, he goes right into it, I guess it means. But these things here seem more simple than some of the others.
More simple in that duh?
More easily to understand. More.
Yeah, as in duh. Okay.
Well, I don't know. The man of intrigues will be hated. I'm not quite sure what that means.
So ish mizimot, mizima, it's interesting because there's in another sense, I've mentioned before that sometimes the words like arom, ayin resh mem, or in this case mizimot, in other cases of biblical Hebrew, they're considered to be negative.
All right.
And here too, this seems to be negative, a man of intrigues. Mizimot is kind of plotting, usually. Edim zomamim, from the same root, zamam, are witnesses, false witnesses that have tried to get somebody else in trouble, for which their punishment is they get punished. What they tried to get somebody to be punished with, they get that punishment themselves. And so here it is, but we do have mizimot in Proverbs, which is positive as well, kind of a positive kind of cunning, skilled.
Arumim is meant to be positive. Usually it's negative.
So in
Like cunning and like the
except for in
snake.
except for in
Nahash.
Proverbs. Sorry, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just thinking Arumim, here it's positive, but in many places in the Tanakh, it's negative, like the Nahash, like the snake.
Right. And so you'll remember, Malka, that in Proverbs, Arumim, if not always, is almost always positive.
Mm.
Because it's the same skill. It's the same intellect that can go in different ways. Can be sneaky and nasty, or the same thing can be clever and wise. Yeah. Okay, Madalena, how about another one? 1923.
Evil men are brought low before the good. So are the wicked at the gates of the righteous. A pauper is despised even by his peers, but a rich man has many friends. He who despises his fellow is wrong. He who shows pity for the lowly is happy. Surely those who plan evil go astray, while those who plan good earn steadfast love. From all toil there is some gain, but idle chatter is pure loss.
It seems to me that this is like from another lesson. This is a different guy talking, right? There's no cynicism here.
No.
It's not, and answering the question less, or what you're commenting for less, this seems like a totally different, here's the happy guy, the good guy, the really positive reinforcement. Anything?
When they say brought low, do they mean subservient?
So you are in
First line.
first line, yeah. So Sach Re'im Lifnei Tovim are demoted, I think, kind of.
Brought down, sort of.
Yeah. Humbled, maybe.
Humble.
Yeah, the shachu is not I don't know, I don't know another example. Not a typical verb. Would be another.
Well, pity sounds like it has a negative connotation. Perhaps you could have been like he who shows. I don't know. Maybe I would have chosen another word instead of pity.
So that's a good point. When we talk about translations, Madalena, every translation has a context in which that language is being said. That's why the New Jewish Publication Society has two or three versions. One of them is gender sensitive that you can set on Sefaria. It asks you can change the translation. Today, in the English that you speak and your generation, Madalena, which I think you might be the only representative here, pity is a little bit negative. Right? I don't want your. How many times have we heard in movies? I don't want, or maybe in real life, I don't want your pity. But pity is a pretty strong positive thing. And the word in Hebrew is chanan, is from the root chanan, chet nun nun. That's chen, that's grace.
Mm-hmm.
When we say in the priestly blessing, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God's face shine upon you and shine upon you with grace, give you a sense of grace, different translations. But grace is something that is it's chesed. It comes from the world of chesed. So if I give money to the poor person, maybe not in the street, also very contextual as far as where we are. But if I donate, if I see a picture, right, on the TV of one of those kids or something, or the animals, and we donate. So we're doing it through pity, right, Madalena? And yet we're giving money.
Yes.
But I agree, it's not something we say. It's not polite today to say I pity.
I mean, grace would have been a good word.
Yeah.
And it also, I mean, thinking more about the interfaith interpretation, the presenting that but a rich man has many friends and a pauper is despised even by his peers, at least in the Catholic Christian world, that is usually the opposite. So that's I mean, the way it's presented. So that's something that caught my attention.
Right. So maybe this is that what the thing you just said just now, that's all generations everywhere. There's rich and there's poor. And there may be another verse in Proverbs. This is exactly the way you said the Catholic Church. That's one answer. Another answer is that people may think that they hold in high esteem those who are less fortunate, whatever. But the bottom line is most of the world works like this, which you'd probably agree to, right?
Yes. It's just an interfaith observation, but
Right. Good. Thank you. Les.
How is it different from compassion, Rachmanis?
Yeah, the truth is Hebrew, it's the same semantic, you know, those balloons that have the different words that are similar, those that people use in lectures and stuff, not me, but I've seen the people use. What are different words for something? So Hanan, Raham, Chasad, Chesed, Rachamim, Tzedakah is a little different. So those three things, Chen, grace, Chesed, kindness, loving kindness, and Rachamim, which is often translated as mercy.
Yeah.
What do you say that, Malka? Would you say mercy?
I was saying mercy.
Yeah, are different than say tzedakah, which is righteousness. So one of the things I think many of you have heard before that differentiates from a philosophical point of view, nonprofit or charitable giving. Let's not use the same word in the definition. The giving of money, contributing money to another, in Christian English would be charity, from caritas, from love. You're bestowing, that comes from the world of chesed and chen and rachamim, rachmonis, right, in Yiddish. But we call it tzedakah, which means doing justice. No, you're not doing this. You need, by definition, the Torah says for the world to be righteous, there's a redistribution of wealth and an evening of the playing field, leveling of the playing field. Yeah, I think that would, yeah. And then remember, all this is in the context of a book that has what my friend Rabbi Sam Feldman, who many of you met when he visited once and used to play Jews Do the Blues, has a song that a wonderful song that he wrote when he was in rabbinical school at JTS called "The Conservative Jew." And the chorus is, "I'm a conservative Jew, so I believe in this, that, and the other thing too. This, that, and the other thing too is conservative Judaism." Okay, so in Proverbs, you got this, that, and the other thing too, is what I'm saying.
I
Okay.
am surprised by the first two lines. It sounds to me that both of them are negative. No, I mean, it's not a good versus evil thing here. One is brought low before the good, and the other one, the wicked, at the gates of the righteous. Is not particularly good either, I think.
Yeah.
Does that make sense as far as being
So
good versus bad?
so look for what's parallel to what, right? In the first line, evil men is parallel to wicked, right? They're not always in the same order. Brought low, we don't need because it says so are, brought low. And then before the good is parallel to the gates of the righteous. So then this, I would say, this is more or less of a parallel. I don't know if the second line adds anything to the first. You feel it's giving a different message, Klaus?
No, I just thought both of them were negative, as you
Okay,
say,
yeah.
parallel. The other comment I had was in the second verse, a pauper and a rich man. I was thinking that I don't think that applies so much in our world anymore. A pauper is despised. Well, sure, sometimes, but not always. And a rich man certainly doesn't always have friends. I think that's one that doesn't particularly well fit into our own being, let's say.
And let's say that I'm just making this up right now, certainly not about you, but let's say you decided that because the United States government has such debt that we really need to get rid of Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, because who are these people? What they couldn't make it on their own. They couldn't pull themselves up by their bootstraps and make their own money. Doesn't that kind of reflect this?
Yeah, well, I understand the difference between evil, between a pauper and a rich man. What I'm saying is, it applies to us, sure, but not in the way. It sounds like an absolute here, whereas in our world, it's really very questionable.
Okay, so you think that Elon Musk doesn't have very many friends?
Well, the ones who have money, probably.
Well, they're not friends, but they think so.
Yeah, I know at least one person I know one person very well over many, many years who was divorced and received half of a very large fortune. And from that point on, basically lost their friends because they were convinced that anybody that's calling them as being nice wants their money.
Mm, mm.
I think maybe some of you have seen that over the years as well. I saw it in a real extreme situation. Very sad to see.
Was it
Very-
true?
Sure, in some cases, people, yeah, there is that element of people that know you have. I mean, you read about the people that won the $1 billion in the lottery, and how everybody in their lost friends suddenly came by and want to be their friends again. If we're looking at, I mean, you read that stuff, but was it true that? I think no. I think I think it's a personality trait that exists beforehand, and it's just exacerbated in this situation.
There are several psychology studies about the psychology of these situations. So it's something that is studied.
But I want to promise and commit to all of you that if I do win the lottery, first of all, don't come and knocking on my door. That's number one. But second of all, I will not, I will still, all of you I will still love, and I'll still be nice to you. I won't think that you're just knocking on my door because I have
Will
money.
you share?
That's another question. We'll have to have a different course about that.
There must be a proverb about that.
When?
Did you buy a ticket?
No, but if I did buy a ticket, you know that one, right? About,
Yes.
God saying, schmuck, buy the ticket, right?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, buy the ticket, that's right.
All right then. Let's go on. Do we have time? Yeah. 24 to 35. Richard, you up to play a game today? Are you done with whatever you're doing? Are you back at home?
Yes, I am now at home. I was in the car until now.
Okay, well, we thank you for joining us, even though your busy schedule. 24 to 35, if you would.
Okay. The ornament of the wise is their wealth. The stupidity of dullards is stupidity. A truthful witness saves lives. He who testifies lies spreads deceit. Fear of the Lord is a stronghold, a refuge for a man's children. Fear of the Lord is the fountain of life, enabling one to avoid deadly snares. A numerous people is the glory of a king. Without a nation, a ruler is ruined. Patience results in much understanding. Impatience gets folly as its portion. A calm disposition gives bodily health. Passion is rot to the bones. He who withholds what is due to the poor affronts his maker. He who shows pity for the needy honors him. The wicked man is felled by his own evil. The righteous man finds security in his health. Wisdom rests quietly in the mind of a prudent man, but among dullards it makes itself known. Righteousness exalts a nation. Sin is a reproach to any people. I guess the king favors a capable servant. He rages at an incompetent one. That assumes, of course, the king himself is competent.
Yeah. The reason that I delineated this particular first section before I didn't say why is because the root resh ayin hey comes up, even though it means it's two different words. One is re'ehu and one is ra'ah, evil. But that's kind of the binding word for that section. This section came to me as a unit because it starts with the word crown. Ornament is also a crown, and it ends with the king. And in the middle there's about the king as well, Barov Am Hadrat Melech, which we'll talk about, the numerous people in the glory of a king. So again, these are two liners that it occurs to me that between Rita Claire and Les's husband Jerry and Sasha, Rita Claire who knits, and Jerry who's an artist, and Sasha who embroiders, and maybe others of you that do that kind of stuff, we could have like a cottage industry of these little things you could put up in your breakfast room, you know, like those little signs you buy that you put up on your doorway, your blessing, all these little two-liners. No, nobody likes that idea. You didn't like my idea of the fortune cookie things either. Well, you know, trying to make some, try and do a fun, should we do popcorn? There's a popcorn thing we can do, Madeline. Remember that popcorn thing? To raise money? We gotta figure out ways. So these two-liners, you could take each one and put it in a different situation.
We can sell Girl Scout cookies.
We could, right? But I don't want to, I don't feel right competing, moving in on their territory.
Oh.
Those young entrepreneurs. So what are the things that jump out to people here, if anything? Yes, Rita Claire. Is this about the money making, the fundraising idea, or is this about the text?
No. I don't do very well making things for money. I like to make people happy, so I give it away. What stands out to me is this one sentence: a calm disposition gives bodily health. To me, I think that is so important. So important, you know, that it's really hard to keep that calm disposition.
Okay, so in Hebrew, chaye besarim, which is interpreted here as bodily health, is a lev merapeh, which is understood here as a calm vision. There are a lot of different ways this could be translated. One might
Yeah.
also say that
Healing to the heart.
is what? Say it again.
I was thinking healing for the heart.
Yeah, maybe chaye. Yeah, and I would say chaye b'sarim is a carnal life, which is not the same. Is healing to the heart, but the translation here it gives better to the context. And then the next line is urakav atzamot kin'ah, that here it says passion, but kin'ah is also jealousy, maybe anxiety that will rot your bones. My guess is if you were to look in like the blue letter Bible, one of these sites that has the different English translations, you'd find all sorts of interesting ways this has been interpreted.
Isn't there also a, what happened? I don't know what's happening.
Go ahead, Rita Claire. I think you want to say something.
Isn't there also Erech Hapayim v'Rav Chesed?
Yeah, but that's God. That is God. So, yeah. So how do you connect that? That's one of God's attributes, right? To have to be long on anger.
Now here we have the Lord and we have a king. We're talking two different individuals, right?
Right. So here,
one's up above, and the other is our kingly, whoever you know is the king at the moment, right?
Right. So if until now, and that was exactly the point in the page before, that this is secular wisdom, why do you think God was brought in this section? Twice.
They don't like to leave him out anytime.
I think maybe because of the king.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to be higher than the king.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's take a look at that line that's underlined.
Actually, God's brought him 3 times. In the 2 verses where you have Lord capitalized, but also he who withholds what is due the poor affronts his maker.
Yeah, exactly. Osehu. Right. Osehu is the one that made him, and not an official God name, but absolutely. That's why it's capitalized. So let's take a look at the line. You know, as we look through a lot of things that I'm trying to find phrases that I know from the past, either in modern Hebrew, I pointed those out, or what I know from my studies of Hebrew literature for the past 60 years now. Yeah, I guess I started studying when I was almost 8 years old, I think. We were studying Hebrew. but Torah text, the term Berov Hadrat Melech, in numerous people is the glory of king, is a key term in halachic literature. And I'll show you, well, let's take an example now. So Rabbi Malko, could you read from Brachot, Talmud Brachot at the bottom of the page? This is just one of many examples.
The sages taught people were seated in the study hall and they brought fire before them at the end of Shabbat. Beit Shammai say, every individual recites a blessing for themselves, and Beit Hillel say, one recites a blessing on behalf of everyone, as it is stated, quote, the splendor of the king is in the multitude of the people.
So what are we talking about? Anybody know? What's the ritual?
Abdallah.
Exactly, Haftalah.
Yeah.
And the question is, do you say the blessing yourself, or do you say it all together, or does one say it and everybody says Amen, which is the same as saying it all together? This is just one example. Let's take another example from Rambam, and it was easier just to lift this from. But the quote often, I think I know it so much, is because in the Mishnah Berurah, which I went through many times, which is Chofetz Chaim's commentary on the Orach Chaim part of the Shulchan Aruch. I know that's complicated, but in the Shulchan Aruch written in the 16th century, broken into four major sections. One of them is day-to-day, Shabbat, and holidays. That's called Orach Chaim, and that's what we studied the most. I studied the most over the years. And the late 19th, early 20th century, Chofetz Chaim, Meir Kagan, Rabbi Meir Kagan, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan, is really in the Ashkenazic world was kind of the final world, at least when I was studying. And he uses it quite a bit to explain why the decision that he made or others made was to do something in public. Better than, in others, we're very much not a religion done in private. We do things in private, but the emphasis is on public. Is community, synagogues, as opposed to somebody praying by themselves. So Rabbi Malko, maybe just do the Rambam as well. We're skipping now to Middle Ages, but it's a good example.
How are the first fruits brought to Jerusalem? All of the inhabitants of the towns in a regional area gather in the central town of the regional area so that they will not ascend to Jerusalem as individuals. For Proverbs teaches the glory of the king is among the multitude of people.
Right, and that law is in the Mishnah already. That custom of doing it together.
Yes.
But the explanation given here is the Rambam, very, very prevalent, and you hear that in modern Hebrew too, at least in the Orthodox world. Barovam Hadrat Melech, right? And that has to do. That has not been the motto of Or Hamidbar, to tell you the truth. We have really never gone. It's not one of our goals to have a huge audience. I would rather do small and people who are more or less on the same page, whether it's prayer, study, or social justice work, without having to deal with the politics. That's me. On the other hand, when you don't do Barovam Hadrat Melech, you have issues with fundraising, you have issues with sustainability. What happens if I move from Palm Springs? Those kinds of things. So there's some wisdom in there, and that's why I kind of made it the center part. It looks like, Eileen, you wanted to say something?
Well, I was just thinking about the sense of community. In Exodus, when they started to build the ark, they wanted everybody to come together to help to build the ark, and it was that sense of community that was a thought from way back when.
Right, and so it would be interesting here to see where has this verse in Proverbs been used to explain something in other parts of the Hebrew Bible. So it wouldn't surprise you or me if that's where that would be an example of that, right?
Right. Yeah.
I think another case, perhaps I'm pretty sure it's brought, is when Solomon Solomon brought everybody together to read from the Torah. So did Ezra. This mitzvah in Deuteronomy of Hakel, to bring the people together at the end of the sabbatical year on Sukkot to read from the Torah in public. Okay. Anything else?
Can I just say one thing before we leave? I just finished in reference to the looking at the poor and the homeless. I just finished a book called Breakfast at Sally's. I don't know if anybody's ever read it, but it's a story about a man who's homeless, and it's a look into the homelessness world. And I think if anybody reads it, you would really think much differently about their world. It's very poignant. It's a current book.
Thank you. Homeless at Sally's.
Breakfast at Sally's.
Breakfast.
Breakfast is sorry. Good. Appreciate that.
Mm.
Okay, anything else?
No.
All right, folks, we'll be together next week. There may be some time off. There will be some time off. Pesach, another one of our daughters is coming, Abigail is coming back with Sasha and to show her youngest Keshet, who will be she's 10 months old, to show her to my mother, see her great granddaughter for the first time.
Right.
But otherwise, I think so. As far as Gospel according to John, we'll be finishing tomorrow. That'll be our last meeting, probably, unless we don't get through it, and we'll add another one. But and then we'll take a break from actively engaging that particular section. We may wait and see if we get funding from the Federation or not. I'm not really sure. We'll continue one way or another. And I think that's it. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll see some of you tomorrow. Thanks for being here. And
Thank
thank you,
you.
Madalena. Thank you.
Thank you.